Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another session on Python programming. We're discussing a very important concept called as decorators. In the last session, we had just had an introduction to this concept of decorators, and we also saw what is the real mechanism of decoration. What it does, it adds functionality to an existing function that is there. We have decorator classes as well, but currently we are discussing only decorator function. So decorator function adds functionality to an existing class, existing function. Primarily, it provides you a wrapper that will wrap your function so that when you execute the actual function that you want to execute, there will be some operation that is carried out before the function and even after the function. So that was the basic idea of using the decorator. Just give me a second. We saw this basic concept of decorators. And today we have to look into the use cases for decorators. We also saw yesterday how we can pass argument to a function which has been decorated. Actually, the nested function, the inner function which is present inside the decorator, that will take the arguments which will be forwarded to your function and so on. Today we'll go even further. We will also try and design a decorator which takes in parameters. That kind of decorator also we can design. Otherwise, your decorator function implicitly takes your function which is being decorated as a parameter. If I decorate function f with a, that means we are calling a and passing f to it as a parameter. But there is something more to it, and that is what we'll see today. But today, to begin with, we'll start a discussion wherein we will see as to how we can use these decorators once created. Yesterday, I created one decorator called as validate, and then we applied to two different functions. Suppose I create a decorator today in one module, in one file, and I thought of using it in some other module. That's also possible. So once you have created a decorator, you no longer have to recreate that. You could actually use the same decorator which has already been created. You can reuse your existing decorator. And that's precisely what we'll look into today. So let's have a look at an example. I have a decorator called as do twice. Now, what does this do twice do? There is a wrapper function called as do twice. Whatever the arguments, arbitrary number of keyword arguments, arbitrary number of position arguments, and arbitrary number of keyword arguments is what you can pass. Both of them are passed to the function as well. Now, when I say arbitrary, it can be 0 to any number of arguments. And it returns this function which takes in this arbitrary number of arguments. Rather, whatever this function returns, that is being returned. But note kijega, this function has been called twice, once over here, another time over here. And then later, whatever the function is returning, that is also being returned. So we have this particular function func. But when we call this do twice, it is actually going to return this do twice wrapper. This do twice is going to do that operation 2 times. I'll keep this debug function aside for a moment and we'll talk about it later. I have this function called as say hello. The basic purpose of this say hello is to greet you. It's going to say hello and it's going to return by. It's going to print hello, it's going to return by. So if I just take it without decoration, I have not selected the decorator part. And if I give a call to this particular function called as say hello, if I now say hello, say underscore hello, if I give a call, so it has printed hello and it has returned by. If you really want to see the behavior in a right way, if I said r is equal to say underscore hello, so it has printed hello. A function is called for its side effect. So this is a side effect. A function is called for its return value, and the return value has been stored in R. So this say hello function has been called. But suppose for some reason I wanted this function to be executed twice. So there is no way you just have to call that function 2 times. But instead, what I've done is I have created this decorator called as do twice. What does this do twice do? Whatever function that we pass to it, the same function is executed 2 times. Same function executed 2 times. Whatever may be the arguments that you may have been passing to that function. And these are all arbitrary numbers, 0 to n number of arguments. So there is no compulsion that I have to pass an argument. There is no such compulsion. So I decorate this function called as do twice. So first let's have this do twice ready. So do twice has already been defined and kept ready. And I now decorate this say hello function with do twice. So I have decorated. This time around, I decide to call say hello. I have called say hello and see what has happened. It has printed hello 2 times. Okay. And why 2 times? Because when I decorate this function, what is actually happening is something like this. What is actually happening is to this function, not this, we have do twice. To this function, do twice, we are actually passing say underscore hello. Say underscore hello is being passed, and the result is assigned to say hello. So this is what we are actually doing when we are decorating that particular function. What's an error? Let us check. Oh, undefined name say hello. So it is only after defining the function we could do it. Here you go. So it's as good as saying this. So this is what has actually happened when I decorate the function. So what is happening is when I decorate this function, I'm passing say hello to do twice. So func is say hello this time around. We come across a wrapper that takes in some parameters that we can take arbitrary number of arguments. This function can take in those parameters. So I have a function. This say hello is not taking any argument, but I'm saying arbitrary number of arguments. So 0 to n, any number of arguments are allowed. So say hello is called first and say hello is called second times, 2 times. And by is returned only once. That function is now being returned and that has been assigned to the say hello when we do something like this. So we have created a decorator that will do that operation 2 times. Suppose if I have this particular function called as greet, which takes in some variable number of arguments. Suppose it takes in variable number of arguments. And I decorate this function also by do twice. At the rate do twice. So I also decorated with do twice. So if I decorate with do twice, if I'm going to greet somebody, suppose if I have this function and I greet somebody, suppose saying greet Ravi, Sunil, Kapil. I want to greet all of them. It says hello Ravi, hello Sunil, hello Kapil, and then it has returned star. Okay. So it has greeted these 3 people, correct? But if I decorate it do twice, if I decorate it with do twice, see what's happening. Do twice has not been created. I define and keep it ready. Do twice is ready. I decorate that function twice. I decorate that particular function with the decorator called as do twice. I give a call to this function greet once again. I run it. Look at this first time and second time. So the basic idea over here was that function that we have, but now note kijega, this function is the one which is taking in parameters, correct? But actually when I'm giving a call to this function over here, it is not this greet function that is being called. It is this do wrapper twice that is being called. ARGs are being received. Keyword arguments are not passed. And those are being actually passed to this particular function. And my function is say hello. And no, not say hello. My function is greet. And it prints all the names that are there. Hello, hello, hello. It prints all the names. But try and understand the mechanism of it. How is it really working? So that was about the decorator called as do twice. How it is really working. But then I also have a decorator called as debug. Now this is more like a use case. Now if I'm running a function, a lot of times we do not know which function is currently being executed. How many arguments is it been taking? We don't know those things. So if I'm going to use a function, I need to know which function is called, how many arguments have been passed. All those I would like to know. The function called as debug, that's going to decorate some function, that's going to decorate some function. And whichever function is going to decorate, we're going to give a call to that function inside the wrapper. This wrapper is going to take in some arguments which are actually going to be passed to the function that is under consideration. And it's going to tell us calling so and so function with these many number of arguments. That's the side effect. And then it's going to return the value and so on. So we have this decorator called as debug. Now to whichever function we apply this decorator called as debug, it will decorate that function, means it will give you some more information about that function. So I decided to decorate this greet function. Had I not decorated this greet function, if I had only taken up this piece of code, and again I greet those 3 friends of ours, I greet these 3 friends. It says hello Ravi, hello Sunil, hello Kapil, and then star. But now I decide to decorate that function. Now, moment I decorated that function, I have decorated it. Now, if I give a same call to this function, it tells us something more. It's saying calling greet with 3 arguments. Oh, which are the 3 arguments? These are the 3 arguments that have been passed. Side effect क्या है? तो इसने पहले print किया hello, hello Ravi. That's a side effect. So here we said side effect क्या है? I will just say slash n, slash slash n. Okay, so it will just go on to the next line in the right way, and function returned the function. What is the function name? Raw string returned this value. This exclamatory R means it's a raw string. Huh? So let's have it once again. Let's decorate this function all over again, and then let's give a call. Not this. We are decorating this function with debug. Let me hide this so you no longer get confused. And let's give a call. It says calling greet with 3 arguments. Great. Side effect क्या है? Hello Ravi, hello Sunil, hello Kapil, and greet returned star. Now how is this happening? Return value star hai. That's perfectly all right. Return value star, that's perfectly all right. But then when I decorate this function debug, it is as good as saying greet. This statement is as good as saying like this. Greet is equal to debug greet. Okay, so that's how it's going to happen. I'm going to pass greet function to debug, and it's going to return a new wrapper. So when I pass this greet function to debug, what actually happens is func is greet, where this do wrapper debug, and the proof of that it is like a wrapper debug. I could just say greet dot dunder yeah, name, let's say name. It's a wrapper debug. So it is not a greet function, it's a wrapper debug. Why? Because when I pass greet function over here, it returns this inner function. This inner function which we are returning is actually taking up the function that we have passed to this decorator as a parameter that is being invoked inside it. And remember, the inner function has a permission to access the variable of the surrounding environment. So here is where we are actually calling this function. But before that, we are checking all the details of the function. What's the name of the function? How many arguments are passing? Length of ARGS plus length of KW ARGS. So how many arbitrary number of positional arguments? How many arbitrary number of keyword arguments that are being passed? And side effect क्या है? So whatever this function prints, whatever this function does, that's the side effect. And once that function has done that thing, it returns a value. And in our case, the value that it returns is just a single star. So that star is being assigned to this value, and it says function has returned so and so. And then we return this particular value that is also getting printed. Okay, yeah. It is saying greet return star, and it is also giving you star. That's because we are returning that value from this particular function. So we have created a debug function. The use case for this particular function is anytime you're trying to debug a function or you want to monitor the execution of the function, you want some messages to be printed, lines to be printed, so that you know, oh, this function has started execution. And in between, whatever verification you want to do, here I'm checking what's the name of the function, how many arguments are passed. So likewise, any kind of investigation you would like to do while that function is about to be executed and when it has completed execution. So before executing, we need to know which is the function that is being executed. After execution, we need to know what has that function returned. So those things we have added to that particular wrapper. So it's a debugger. It's a small tool that we have created, which you can apply to any function, which will give you some more information about that particular function that is currently running. Let's see what had we done over here. I call say hello, I print say hello, and we have seen all this, and we have seen all this. So that was a basic idea of using this do twice decorator and debug. But I told you, I have defined this do twice over here, and I used it multiple times. Once with say hello, I could use it with greet function also. We did that earlier. Not just that, this decorator that I have created, the say hello takes 0 positional argument were 2 were given. Here we go. If I give a call to say hello, I'm passing 2 parameters. Now, this say hello function that we have is nothing but referring to this debug. Debug may this particular function does not take in any additional parameter. So actually, this wrapper function that is being written debug, it has been decorated with debug. Say hello, no. Say hello has been decorated with do twice. Do twice के अंदर का ये function that is taking in some parameters. It says say hello takes 0 positional argument, but 2 were given. 0 positional argument, but 2 were given. Which line did I generate error? On line number 27, 20. Here we go. I'm saying say hello, and I'm passing 2 parameters. So these 2 parameters that we have here, when I'm giving a call, it's happy. Look at this. If I'm giving this call, it's happy. It has printed hello 2 times. You'll say, have 4 times कैसे आ रहा है? Because do twice का है और function में वो काम 2 बार हो रहा है. Do twice में 1 और 2 और 2 2 4 हो गया फिर. And that has been written. So there is no question about this particular function correct execution. Then when I pass this say hello with some parameters, and this is a line where it is generating an error. Why is that? Because say hello is a function which was not designed to take in any parameter, any positional parameter. Here I'm passing some positional. It says it takes 0 positional arguments, but 2 were given. So these are 2 positional arguments that we are given. So it says there is an error. Had I put this in brackets, I have done that. No, I haven't done that. Let us put into brackets and see what would happen if I put into brackets. I pass a single tuple. Had I executed in this fashion, it still says 1 was given. What is the 1 argument that we are given? This is a tuple that we have passed. So it's complaining about that particular tuple because say hello as function is not designed to take in any parameter. Here we go. In do twice, although we are giving a call, let's trace that particular code so that we understand what's going to happen. So where is this say hello? Say hello has been decorated with do twice. What I'll do is I'll define this particular function. Note it is not taking any parameter. And I decorate it here. I decorate this function with this. And then I give a call to say hello. It's working right. But if I pass some parameters to this particular function, it is having error. Why? Because this do twice function returns this wrapper do twice. This returns this wrapper do twice. Okay, that is what is being returned. It may look like this is taking an arbitrary number of arguments. It may look like it's taking an arbitrary number of arguments. Suppose it was a case like we had such function foo. Suppose if I say def f, or let me write it over here. Here I have def foo. It's taking these parameters. Okay, and I give a call to this function foo. I give a call to this function foo. It is happy. I pass one parameter. It is still happy. I pass some additional parameter. It is still happy. But and I pass some keyword arguments. It's still happy. A keyword arguments है. It's still happy. So there is no complaints about this function foo. ARJs and KWRJs. I may not pass anything. I may pass a single argument. I may pass multiple arguments. It's still happy with that particular function. But when I decorate my function, what's going to happen? When I decorate this say hello with do twice, let's see which function is being called. I have decorated. And if I now say underscore hello dot dunder name dunder. It says wrapper do twice is a function that is going to get called. So this wrapper do twice takes in some parameters, correct? So let's call this say hello again now. Let's call this say hello again. Okay. I'll say underscore hello. It has printed hello 2 times. If I pass some parameters, it is generating an error. Why? Because this say hello function is not designed to take in any argument. So a wrapper do twice में this is the function func that we are trying to call. It says say hello takes 0 position argument because here you are actually passing 2 arguments. Okay, whatever the arguments. But func actually refers to this particular function say hello, and that say hello is not supposed to take in any arguments. And here we are passing 2 arguments. And when I'm giving a call, if I just say star this, it is going to have value none. But if I pass some parameter, then ARG's value will be none. But say hello is not taking that additional parameter. Where is it failing? It's failing on this line number 15 पे fail हो रहा है. Look at this line number 15 पे fail हो रहा है. Where I said this. Because func now refers to this particular function say hello. Right? So if I just print the name of the function, what does it print? Let's see. If I say underscore hello dot render name render, it's giving you this wrapper do twice. Yeah, wrapper do twice. Correct? And here I'm calling say hello. Here I'm calling say hello. So if I'm calling say hello and if I pass Anil or Sunil, it will generate an error because say hello actually does not take in any parameter. None hai to theek hai, but otherwise it doesn't take in any parameter. So if that is why it is generating an error. It is not allowing you to pass those additional parameters. So this statement has generated an error. If I say greet Dheeraj and Manish, that probably will not generate any error. So hello Dheeraj, hello Manish. So calling the program with 2 parameters, side effect. Calling the greet with 2 parameters, side effect. Hello Dheeraj, and then return, and then return. How is it really working? Let's understand. Greet has been decorated with debug. So when you come to debug, here these are 2 statements that will get printed. So these are 2 statements that have got printed. After that, we are saying calling func function. So for us, this func function is nothing but greet. Whatever arguments you are passed. So here, if I'm passing some arguments, if I pass some arguments, if I don't pass any arguments, that's still okay. Because we're going to use this debug to decorate greet. That's still okay. It's in greet function is being called. Greet return so and so. But then, यहाँ देखिए calling debug wrapper.debug. So in this particular function, here when I'm saying debug, calling func.name. So if I now say hello.name is going to wrapper do twice. So that's the function which is actually getting called. It is taking these 2 parameters. That's okay. While I'm passing, if it is none, then there is no issue. Look at this foo function once again. If I have this function foo and I pass none, there is no problem. But if I pass anything other than none, it will have a problem. It did not. Oh, it's taking away arbitrary number of arguments. Okay, it's taking an arbitrary number of arguments. So I can pass 23, 24, 25, anything I can pass. I can pass keyword arguments as well. But that's not the case with say hello. Oh, in this case, if I don't pass any arguments, that's still okay. That we are seeing. That's also still okay. There is no complaint about it. But here when I'm giving a call, if I pass some arguments and if I'm passing those arguments over here to this particular function, say hello, that is where it will complain because say hello is not taking any arguments. Whereas this debug, I have not applied to. I have applied to this greet. Okay, and whatever names that you're going to pass to this greet, that will be actually passed over here. Okay, that will be passed over here, and they are the names that will get printed. So let's look at this debug once again. I have debugged it, and I say greet without parameter, no issues. Greet with 1 parameter, no issues. It's currently printing hello 1. अगर आपने कुछ पास ही नहीं किया तो कुछ प्रिंट नहीं करेगा. 1 पास किया तो 1 प्रिंट करेगा. So likewise 1 के साथ साथ if I also pass twice, that's also being printed hello 1 and twice. Point is, I have created a wrapper called as debug. a decorator called as debug, that is giving you information about which function is being executed. This is a function that is being executed. With how many arguments is that function going to get executed? What is the side effect of running this function? And what is the function returning? The function the return value. This is what the function is returning. This is how the function has been given a called. And what is the side effect of calling that function? That impact we can see over here. So the good part is we can attach this debugger to any other function. Means what? Suppose you are not in this program. You are in some other module here. There's another file. And I'm saying from function decorator 4, look at this file name. The name of this file is function decorator 4. I'm saying from function decorator 4, import do twice. So effectively what we have done is what we have created our own unique module. So this is a module that we have created and we are reusing the decorator that we had created earlier. So I apply this do twice to another function called as save. Suppose normally the save function would do what? Look at this. If I give a call to this function 3 times, पहली बार call किया v, अगली बार call किया v, अगली बार call किया v, so every time we give a call, it is just printing one value. But if I now decorate it with do twice, and now if I give a call to this particular function, see the difference? It is saying v 2 times. So do twice, v 2 times. Earlier it was not doing 2 times, it had only done it once. Every time we give a call, it is printing only v. Now every time we give a call, it's printing those values 2 times. So we can use a decorator that has been previously defined in some other file module in another module by importing it. So I'm saying from this particular module, import this do twice, and we can apply to any other function which is present in this particular program. So what are we effectively doing is we are reusing the decorator that has been previously created. Any questions?
Sir,
There is something more about decorators that I'll be discussing, but at least regarding whatever we have seen till now, is there any question? Please ask.
Sir, hello.
Yes, please.
सर वो कीवर्ड आर्गुमेंट में हम इंटीजर दे सकते हैं?
Any positional, any keyword arguments, no issues. Integer भी दे सकते हो. Arbitrary number of arguments है ना, कुछ भी पास कर सकते हैं, कितने भी number of arguments.
Sir, for example, 1 is equals to value, like that.
वो keyword argument हो जाते हैं.
Yes, sir, वही कीवर्ड में.
हाँ, इसकी बात करें ना.
Yes, sir. Double star KW.
Look at this. I have decorated this, and I say greet. I pass these are your position arguments, and let's pass some keyword arguments. If I say okay, p equal to क्या है? Okay, any number of arguments we can pass. I could also pass integers. It is printed all of them.
सर वो p के जगह पे दे सकते हैं क्या इंटीजर?
नहीं, hold on. When I have a function that I'm writing, it is also going to take these keyword arguments. Actually, it is calling a function which is not taking those arbitrary number of keyword arguments. So अगर parameters होते ना, तो that would also been taken care of. So let me just take another example जहाँ parameters है. Whatever I have passed over here, they have been received. Let's have a look at this. अगर ऐसा कोई function होता, तो इसे call करते समय I can pass 1, 2, 3, 4. That's perfectly okay. In addition to that, I can also pass A is equal to 45, B is equal to 67. That's also okay. So these three are your ARGS and these two are your KWARGS. You want to have a proof of it? We could just do that. I could say print ARGS and print KWARGS. arg. Okay, I'll just print it. So if I have this function foo, now if I give a call to this function foo, and if I pass 1, 2, तो ये आपका arg, ये आपका कीवर्ड आर्गुमेंट. कीवर्ड आर्गुमेंट इज अ डिक्शनरी एंड arg इज अ टपल. आ गया. If I don't pass anything, so both of them are empty. If I pass 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these are my arbitrary number of position arguments, and a equal to 55, b equal to 66 is what I do. So these are my arg and these are my kwarg. So we could actually pass both of them. So these are my arbitrary number of position arguments and these are arbitrary number of keyword arguments. Okay.
सर वो उल्टा हो सकता है ना,
नहीं
55
हो सकता.
इक्वल्स
No,
टू ए.
no, 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 no. Arbitrary number of keyword arguments cannot come before args. So if I change this order that we had already seen in the rules, so that generates an error. If I say star a r g,
सर वो नहीं सर, जो लिखा है ना ए इज इक्वल्स टू 55, सर वो 55 इक्वल्स टू ए हो सकता है क्या?
55
इज इक्वल्स टू ए.
क्यों नहीं? नहीं नहीं नहीं, 55 is a constant. Okay.
सर कीवर्ड में.
Keyword में हाँ, 55 is a constant. How can we say this constant is going to take some value? That's not allowed. 55 is
सर
a constant ना.
वो
तो
इंटीजर
A,
नहीं
B are
चलेगा ना.
parameters ना.
यस सर.
वो arbitrary number of keyword arguments. तो ये key है, ये उसकी value है. How can I have value as a key?
सर सो 55 can't be used as a key.
How can 55 be a 55 can be a key, but then what are we trying to say? ये key मतलब क्या है? डिक्शनरी का की बात नहीं कर रहे हम लोग. We are talking about key to this particular function. So here we have to have a key which will identify the value. So it is like a function which takes in parameters like this, def f, and I have function a parameter called as a, comma b, comma c. So these are three parameters that we have. So these are now if I have to give a call to this f, so I can say f or is equal to a is equal to 4, b is equal to 6, and c is equal to 55. That's okay. But if I say it other way around, 55 is equal to c, there's an error. That's not something which is allowed. तो अभी के टॉपिक से नहीं मतलब इसका कोई, it is just related to the way we define a function. So if I have these three parameters, parameters, so when I'm using keyword arguments, I'll have my parameter name and the value, parameter name and the value, parameter name and the value. 55 cannot be a parameter name. It can be a value. It can be key of a dictionary. That's okay. But not for keyword arguments. It cannot be used for keyword arguments. 55
Okay,
can be a key in a regular dictionary. So if I say D is equal to, I have created a dictionary, I say 55 is equal to Sachin, comma 44 is equal to Anil. That should be okay. क्या होगा? Oh, I will not say equal to them. I'll say colon. That's okay. And I could print this dictionary. So 55 in a dictionary can be a key, but 55 cannot be my keyword argument. KWARG is keyword argument. That means function ka parameter. 55 cannot ever be a parameter of a function. Any other question? Have you understood this? Quick feedback. Monica?
Sir, I have joined late.
That cannot be an excuse. No? Okay.
So I have watched yesterday recording also. I need to go through.
Okay. Here we are. Let's look at another decorator. I have this function called, I have this module called as datetime, from where I'm importing datetime. We have already seen this module called as datetime. We already seen this particular module called as date time. Supplies you classes for manipulating dates and time, correct? So let's make a use of it. Now, this is very powerful use case. What I'm actually trying to do is just try and understand. A very powerful use case is what we're going to take. There are some functions that I plan to call. Listen, there are some functions that I plan to call that is going to perform some task. Listen to me very carefully. Say it could be a backup task. But in the office hours, when I'm working, if the backup operation starts, that's going to hamper the performance, isn't it? Because backup is going to utilize a lot of resources. The operation of taking backup is going to take a lot of resources. So मुझे चाहिए, after my office hours are over, then the backup operation should start. And during office hours, some other operation should start. So I want to make sure a particular function can be called. Listen to very carefully. I want to make sure that a particular function can be called only during specified times. You already define a function. Rahul writes a function. Rahul is a guy, maintenance guy. He writes a function. I want to ensure the maintenance operation starts after my shift is over. That means Rahul gives me a function called as backup. That backup function will run only after office hours. During the office hours, if you try and run that function, it should not run. I can create such a decorator which will specify what is the right time for that function to be executed. So if you want to execute that function during the office hours, after the office hours, I can create a different decorators. And I can apply those decorators to that function. So that function's execution will happen only during that time. Isn't it powerful? Let's have a look at it. How can we ensure that a function can be called only during specified intervals of time? Here we go. So I have a function called as only during office hours. Whatever is a function that we're going to decorate by using this decorator should be called only during office hours. My office hours are 10 to 6. So ये 10 से less than or equal to 10 चाहिए आपका, greater than equal to 10 चाहिए आपका time, R, and less than equal to 18, less than 18 चाहिए 10 से 6 बजे तक. 6 के बाद नहीं कॉल कर सकेंगे आप. ओके, तो आई कैन जस्ट से लेस देन और इक्वल टू 6. तो 10 बजे से 6 बजे तक या 6 के पहले तक आप इसे कॉल कर सकते हैं. आफ्टर दैट यू कैन कॉल. I say datetime.now.r will give me the R. Once I get that R, I'm going to check. If this condition is satisfied, only then will I give a call. Otherwise, I'll print the message saying it's the rest time now and pass. Don't do anything. So that's a wonderful wrapper that we have created till here. We have created wrapper and our function returns that particular wrapper. Our decorator returns that particular wrapper. So that's a decorator function that we have created. Watch it very carefully. Here we go. That's a decorator function that we have created. I have a function called as do it. Okay, I have a function called as do it. And this do it function should get called only during office hours. Normally, if I define this function, watch it. Normally, watch it. Normally, if I define this function do it, I can do it anytime. I can call do it anytime. Okay. But I want to make sure after the office hour, this function doesn't get called. And my current system time is this. Time. My current system time is 8 बज के almost 9 o'clock. So 9 o'clock पे function run नहीं होना चाहिए. So let's decorate this function saying only during office hours. Correct? Now if I give a call to this function do it, it says sorry, it's a rest time now. It's not getting executed. Okay, but suppose my time was 3 o'clock. Suppose the time was 3 o'clock. Let's change the system time. Assume the time is 3. I will not set the time automatically. We will set the time. Suppose if I say it's not 9, I say currently it is 11 o'clock. I change the time. Suppose it's 11. Huh? Now let's run this particular code. Same function, do it. I call it once again. Watch it. It's getting working. It says, okay, I'll get the work done because it's office hours. Let me change the time let me make the time automatic. If I make it automatic, it is currently 29, 9:01. Now again, if I try and run this particular function, do it. Which is sorry, it's the rest time now. Exactly the opposite time, maintenance, do maintenance. I should do maintenance after the office hours, correct? So what could I do? I could write one more function. Only after office hours. Okay. And I'm going to say if it is less than or equal to 10 and greater than 18 तो चलेगा यानी 18 से 10 बजे तक के बीच में और I could just say it is less than 18 less than नहीं it is greater than 18 our time is 18 is less than dead time now. Okay, and 18 is our time is less than 10. यानी शाम के 6 बजे से सुबह के उस तक काम होना चाहिए. Otherwise, it will say it's work time now. Do maintenance later. ऐसा कुछ तो मेरा एक रैपर है. So I have this decorator called as do office, do this thing. I have a function called as backup. Do backup is a maintenance activity, correct? And I write over here print taking backup, please wait. It looks like function. If I normally design this function, if I run it, it will just run. I don't know that. But if I decorate it with this function only after hours, so my function should run only after office hours. So let me decorate it. So if I decorate this function, I have executed and kept it ready. Now I call this function do backup. Do backup. It works. It's work time now. Do maintenance later. अच्छा गलत हो गया मेरा टाइम. क्या हो गया? Is less than 18. अभी फिलहाल टाइम क्या है? 9 बजे है. Am I not giving the right time? I want it to be executed after 6 p.m. That means my time should be greater than 18, correct? And time should be okay, let's just put it after 6 p.m. Okay, let's do it this way. That time now, abhi ka time should be greater than 18. ऐसा कर देते हैं. So after 6 p.m. you can do the backup. Huh? Here you go. Now if I call this function called as do backup, it says taking backup, please wait. कर रहा backup. But suppose अभी ये 5 बज गए, शाम के 5 बज चुके हैं. Assume it's only evening 5 o'clock and not after 6. So suppose the time was 5 p.m. Time was 10 p.m. Assume. Now if I run this function 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. तो कहता है it's work time. do maintenance later. And अगर time what we have decided वैसा है, अभी का 9 रात के, ऐसे same time automatically. Now if I run this particular code, it will take the backup because it's after 6 p.m. So I could at any point of time design such functions. So if I have decorated that particular function, it is ensuring that a function gets called only during a specific time. So we have created a function only after office hours or only during office hours. So office hours के दौरान सिर्फ आपका रेगुलर काम बनना चाहिए. Office hours के बाद आपका maintenance activity होना चाहिए. So likewise, we are creating various functions and we are decorating the appropriate functions with them. Suppose I have another function called as wish. Whatever name we pass is going to capitalize and print that name. So if I have this function wish, and if I call this function wish, okay, I call this function wish, saying wish, and I pass some name saying Sam, एक name. It says S in capital. ऐसा कुछ तो कह रहा है, S in capital. That's a simple function that we have. Now I have a function called as wish by time decorator. अब यहाँ Sam pass किया तो it is just printing Sam. मुझे वैसा नहीं चाहिए. Watch it. If I decorate it with this decorator, see what's interesting thing is gonna happen. ये decorate कर दिया मैंने. उसके पहले wish by time एक मेरा decorator है that we already defined and kept ready. I have this decorator which is already there in the memory. I decorated this function wish. We just now executed that wish. Yeah? और एक बार execute करता हूँ wish function. Wish Sam. तो सिर्फ Sam कह रहा है. If I had decorated by wish by time, see what is going to happen. Huh? Wish by time. Now if I want to wish Sam, it says good night Sam. क्या बात है? Good night Sam. और ध्यान से देखो. If I'm here, अभी good night कहा उसने. If the time was 7 o'clock in the morning, and if I run this particular same code, Sam ही कहते हैं, good morning Sam. जादू हो रहा है. If the time was 3 o'clock, if I run this particular code once again, कहता good afternoon Sam. So it is going to greet that particular fellow depending on what's the current time. Let me set the time to automatic so that we don't have to bother. अभी रात के 9 बजे हैं. So if I now say wish Sam, कहता good night Sam. How is this happening? Let's look at a decorator. I have this decorator called as wish by time. You pass a function. So your function over here is wish. That function we pass. I have greet with messages. The name is the name that you would like to print. I give a call to this function. We get the name. And then I check if datetime.now.r less than 12 है, तो good morning name. Datetime.now.r less than 16 है, तो good afternoon name. And 16 से आगे रहे तो good night name. Okay? या good evening भी डाल सकते थे आप. तो 4 तक good afternoon है. You could add one more else. Elif. I could say रात के 8 बजे के बाद I'm going to say good night. जो तब तक मैं good evening कहूँगा. 4 बजे के पहले गुड आफ्टरनून कहा. 4 बजे से लेके सपोज 8 बजे तक 20 तक आपने गुड इवनिंग कहा. सपोज आपने गुड इवनिंग कहा और बाद में आपने गुड नाइट कहा. क्रिएटेड a decorator. So decorator is wish by time. This is the inner function. That is what is being returned. Whatever name we pass over here, it's going to return that name and greet that fellow with that name. Greet that name with this particular message depending on what's the time. 12 बजे के पहले गुड मॉर्निंग, 12 बजे के से 4 बजे तक गुड आफ्टरनून, 8 बजे तक गुड इवनिंग और 8 बजे के बाद गुड नाइट. ऐसे हमें कर लिया. And that's a function that we're going to return. So when I decorate this particular function wish with wish by time, so actually wish is going to be called over here. Wish is going to be called over here. And henceforth, whenever I call wish, it is actually this function that is being called. Want to have a proof of it once again? I can just say wish dot dunder name dunder. It is greet with message. That's the function that is being called. And we are greeting that fellow depending on what's the time. Now let me do the combination of this. I write a function greet. It can take in variable number of arguments. It can take in variable number of arguments. If the name is not, length is not less than zero, not zero, then I'm going to print all the names. Name is number of names that we pass are not zero. That means you have passed some names. You're going to greet everybody. So I have this function greet. If I call greet and I don't pass any parameter, it will just leave it blank. But if I now pass this greet and look at the Raj, J capital, Mandar ka DR capital, Shekhar ka Kar capital, and so on. But if I run this particular function, it says good night, Rajiv, good night, Mandar, good night, Shekhar. How did that happen? That too in a correct format, Rajiv, Mandar, Shekhar. How is it happening? Watch it. This name Rajiv will be passed over here to this greet. These three names will be passed over here. Length not equal to zero. Yes, there are three names that will be passed. For name in names, I'm saying wish name. When I say wish, this is a function that is going to get called and that's going to capitalize and print. But it has been decorated by time. So ये time के हिसाब से greet कर रहा है. Good night, good night, good night. Again, if the time was in the afternoon and it was not at night, it would have greeted everybody. Nice good afternoon. Suppose it was 2 o'clock. Excuse me. Suppose it was 2 o'clock and I run the same function. Watch it. I'm running the same function. I'm not doing any change in the program. I'm just running this function. It says good morning, good morning, good morning. क्या बात है? Good morning क्या है? 2 बजे के पहले. Okay. 12 से कम है तो 2 बजे है. 24 hours clock है. और अगर दोपहर का टाइम था, I have to have after 12. So let's say 13. 12 घंटे का. 24 hours clock है. Let's run the function once again. कहता है good afternoon Raji, good afternoon Mandar, good afternoon Shekhar and so on. So we have created a decorator called as wish by time that's going to add a message before the return value of the function gets executed. ये आपका जो भी function रहेगा, ये आपको capitalize करके नाम return करेगा और उससे वो good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night करके greet करेगा. We saw more practical application over here. Only during office hour, only during office hour, only after office hours. That means this task, even if you call that particular function, that will get executed only after this time, not before that time. And this particular function, the function that will be decorating with only during office hours, will be executed only between 10 to 6. 10 बजे के पहले नहीं और 6 बजे के बाद में नहीं. That will not run. So such is a simple decorators that we have created. Have you understood this particular example? Preparation, gentlemen. Okay, let me share the files with you. Give me a second. Share 3 files with you. If I receive these files. And have you understood the concept, like how we can use it practically? We are now controlling the time at which the function should get executed. We are controlling the number of times for which the function should get executed. Have you understood? Yes or no? Quick feedback. और राहुल और शंतनु क्या डाउट है? Okay. Is that all about decorators that we plan to discuss? No. We are yet to create a decorator which takes in a parameter other than your function. We said decorator is a function which takes a callable as a parameter and returns another callable. The one that we have passed as a parameter is the one which is called from within the inner function, the callable which is returned, a function which is returned. That's the basic design. Now let's go ahead with something more. I have a module called as function tools. Let me take you to this function tools. There are something called as function tools. It is higher order function and operations on callable object. What is a higher order function? A function which takes another function as a parameter is called as a higher order function. तो ये note करके रखो, higher order function क्या होता है? A function which takes another function as a parameter is a higher order function. And operations on the callable object. All such things are provided in this func tools. What does it say? Function module is for higher order functions, function that can act on or return other functions. In general, any callable object can be treated as a function for the purpose of this module. So let's not talk about any object, let's talk about only functions. So there are a lot of things like cache hai, property hai, key map hai. There are a lot of things which are there. Okay, let's see what is that we are using over here. So I imported this particular module. I'm saying from function tool import wraps. So what is this wraps? Let's check it out. We have something called as wraps. This is a convenience function for invoking update wrapper as a function decorator when defining a wrapper function. It's equivalent to something, something, something. There's so much of information that has been given. Now, it would be difficult, time consuming for you to understand what is happening here. Instead, let me directly jump into the demonstration that will help you understand the very purpose of this particular concept. Now, watch it very carefully, what I'm going to do. I'm not going to write this statement. Just like earlier, I'm going to create a decorator. Just like earlier, I have a function, a decorator called as logged. Listen, another useful use case here. Kahan use karna hai. I have something called as logged. Whichever function I'm calling, suppose it takes this function as a parameter. Before that function gets called with whatever parameters that are there, I'm going to, like last time you kiya tha bhaiya, function so and so is called with these many number of arguments. So I'm going to create a logger for that function. So I have my logger. Watch it. I have my logger. I have a function called as square, which has been decorated by this logged. Which has been decorated by this logged. So let's do it. If I normally take this function square, normally, so what would this square do? If I say square, and if I pass 3, we'll just say 9. That's just returning a square. But if I now decorate this function by the log, so it's going to create and give us some information. And now if I call function square, it says square function is called with this particular argument 3, and result is 9. So it has understood, it is doing some logging, it is keeping a track as when that function is being called, with what parameter is being called, that information we're getting. How did that happen? When I decorated this particular function, it is as good as writing this statement. It is as good as writing this statement. Okay. Suppose if I had this function square, now if I say logged is equal to square, if I say this, and I again call this function square with 5, the square of 5 is 25. But before that, it's saying square with square was called with argument 5. I should say function square was called with argument 5. I'll say function function square is called, yeah, function so and so is called with arguments so and so arguments. So this is what the decorator does. This is what the decorator does. So what's so special? Now, if you are a Python programmer, you cannot be cheated by this decorator. That means if somebody creates a decorator, you can very easily find out which is the actual function that is being called. Like if I decorate this, and now if I call square, you can fool the world that you are calling square, correct? And it is returning square. Actually, it's not the function square that is directly being called. So just to know that Anybody could just say square dot dunder name dunder. So it is with logging function that is being called. And if I say dot doc, it will give you a different documentation. Okay, the nested function inside the decorator log. That means when you're calling this function square, actually square is referring to the return value of this log. This is with logging function, and this logging function, it's a nested function within the decorator log. So that is the one that is being called. Why? Because when we decorate a function, actually this is what we're doing. So anybody can find out whether it's an actual function or the function which has been decorated. Decorate is being called. Here again, if I have this function foo that has been decorated, so if I just say foo dot dunder name dunder, it is saying with logging. It's not foo function. Had it been foo function, look at this. If I select only these two lines and I call foo, it's foo. But the moment I decorate, it's no longer foo. It's with logging. Means when I decorate a function, it's actually log function being called. That's my decorator, to which we pass the function as a parameter. It returns the something. So when I give a call to this log, it returns this with logging, and logging was assigned to this foo. So foo is actually now referring to logging. Now, why am I talking about it? There is a reason. That means if you to hide actually which function is being called, you had decorated your function, but user can very easily figure out which function is the actual function that is being called. You want to control that? Use a predefined decorator called as wraps. I'm saying wraps functions. What will it do? Let's check. Okay, invalid syntax guy. Oh, I did not select everything. Okay, now your inner nested function, I'm going to say wraps function. What it does, I'll explain later. But this decorator I have not created. This decorator is predefined. Function tools.wraps. That is a decorator which is predefined. Now what it does, I'll just explain you. Let's decorate this function square once again. Okay, suppose if I already had a function square, or let me just say del square, just to be on the safer side, del. Okay, now let's decorate this function with log. Watch it. It's going to work exactly in the same fashion. Square of 5 बोला तो अरे square of 5 क्या है? Square of 5 कहा तो it says function square with argument 5 is being called, correct? Called, and answer is 25. You may be wondering what's the difference. But when I'm saying square of 5, which is the actual function that is being called?
With logging.
With logging. And your 5 is passed as a parameter here. That, and here when I call this func, it is your square function that is being called, because square is this parameter to this function. Square is being called, and your 5 is passed as a parameter. So it comes here, return square, that gets assigned to the result, and that result is being returned. Okay. So if I now say square dot dunder name dunder, it should say square. Yes or no? अरे yes no कुछ तो बोलो, क्या देना चाहिए square dot name?
लॉगिन में लॉग
लॉगिन देना चाहिए. क्यों लॉगिन देना चाहिए राहुल?
क्योंकि हमने उसको डेकोरेटर यूज किया है.
डेकोरेटर यूज किया है. एंड व्हेन आई हैव डेकोरेटेड इट, ये जो इनर फंक्शन रिटर्न किया जा रहा है, दैट इज द नेम दैट इज असाइंड टू स्क्वायर, करेक्ट?
यस.
So square is just an identifier, identifying referring to this particular function. But if I now do this, it says square. So now nobody will be in a position to identify क्या वो square ही call करे या कौन सा call करे. What it does, this with logging function now inherits the properties. This logging function now it says this is a convenience function for invoking update wrapper as a function decorator when defining the wrapper function equivalent to something something something. You hardly understood anything out of it. or nobody may understand what it does. Without the user decorator factory, the name example would be wrapper and the doc string of the original function example would be lost. Actually, what it does, let me explain in simple words. This particular function with login has been decorated with this. Your
Yes.
function square is decorated with logged, but your with login function has been decorated with wraps. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
These wraps take a parameter which is your function. Why? Because when you say logged of square, square is passed over here. So this is over here. So it says whatever are the properties of this function func, that should now be applied to this with login. So actually it is the function with login. But whatever are the properties of func, attributes of func. अब देखिए और एक, if I say square dot dunder doc dunder, it says returns the square of the argument passed. Array, actually it should have given you nested function inside the decorator, and that can happen if I do not comment this, if I do not have this, if I run this particular, if I execute the code once again, if I decorate it with a log, watch it, if I again decorate with log, and if I now say square, it will work. Square of 5, 25 दे रहा है. Not just that, if I say square dot dunder name dunder, you'll get what you're expecting with logging. अगर आपने कहा नहीं नेम नहीं चाहिए, उसका डॉक्यूमेंटेशन बताओ क्या है, कौन सा फंक्शन कॉल हो रहा है, कहता है नेस्टेड फंक्शन इनसाइड द डेकोरेटर लॉग. अरे दिस कुड बी कंफ्यूजिंग ना, स्क्वायर होगा, it should give information of the square. So we are saying over here, when I'm decorating this particular function square with log, inside I'm using this wraps, a predefined decorator, to whichever function it has been applied. Listen to very carefully. To whichever function it has been applied, that function will inherit all the attributes of this function. That means the attributes of this function func will be applied to this particular with logging. So the properties of this function will change. And now if I do that, watch it. If we do that, here we go. I again decorate this. And now let's do it. Working is correct. If I say square of 100, it gives you 10,000. Working is perfect. But the most interesting part is, if I say square dot dunder name dunder, oh square SQ square, it's a square function. Dunder this dot doc, it's a return square of an argument passed and so on. So we can hide from the user the decorator, the internal function of the decorator that is actually going to get called. What it does, whichever is the function that we have decorated. So when I say square is decorated this log, means square is passed to this log as a parameter. Look at this, log ko square kya hai, passed as a parameter. Means over here func is square. So when I say at the rate wraps square, so the properties, the attributes of this square function will be applicable to this. And that is the reason value of name, value of doc has now changed to square, returns a square. Otherwise, you had seen earlier, it was saying function square, no, something else it has said. Nested function inside the decorator with logging. That is what is needed. Now it is giving you the right information. Right means how you want it to be shown to the user. That means user will not be aware whether function square pehle se aisa tha or whether it has been decorated later. And to do that, if you do not want the properties of your nested function to be associated with the function that you are actually calling, decorating, then we say wraps func. That means whatever are the properties of the function that we are trying to decorate, that will now be the properties of the that will now be the properties of this particular function, because it says wraps function. That means the properties of this function are now applicable to this particular function. Any attempt made to investigate will give you property of square and not the property of this with logging. Have you understood this?
But sir, if you don't want the property of logging, then you should just remove the decorator. No, it will be more easy.
More easy नहीं. Actually, बस समझिए, easy की बात नहीं है. It is not question whether it is easy or whether it is difficult. The question here was different. I do not, suppose I have decorated a function. I want you to use the decorator function that I have given without I revealing it to you कि actual कौन सा function call हो रहा है, ये मुझे आपसे hide करना है. I do not want you to have an opportunity to investigate by saying dot name, dot doc. I do not want to give you an opportunity to investigate which function, which is the actual function being called. I want to hide it from you. I want you to believe that query call kiya ja raha hai. So I'm saying apply the attributes of square function to that function, inner function, जो मेरे nested function wrapping क्या था function का नाम with logging, जो भी function का नाम था. Here we go. So I'm saying whatever the properties of this function, please apply those attributes to this function. So if somebody tries to investigate, they will never get the details about this function. They will get the details of the function which was sent as a parameter. Whatever is a square, whatever is a function that you sent as a parameter to the debugger, to the decorator. Is that okay, Viraj?
Yes, sir.
Now we have explored function tools from very good apps. We explored date time. We had also seen time earlier. I want to create one more decorator. अब ये decorator क्या करेगा? Just have a look at it. I want to create a decorator that is going to do something more special, advanced operation करने वाला decorator चाहिए. As the name suggests, your decorator is going to do some very interesting operation. I have a decorator called as check execution time. That means whichever is the function that I will decorate, it is going to check its execution time. I have a function called as list operation. What it does, whatever is the number of times that we pass, to be number of times, आपने कहा 5. So it says for element in the range 1 to 5. Yeah, 5 plus 1, that is 6, and 1 to 5. Result equal to result plus equal to sum. यहाँ क्या यूज करें हम लोग? Okay. I'm saying for I in the range of so and so, I is equal to I square. I square. क्या कहते हैं? For I in the range 1 to 1,01,000, okay, I square. और उस सबका sum करने वाले. I'm gonna get. Let's see the result of this first. It's a list comprehension. A list comprehension है. I have a list of all these numbers. Square के. The list is too big just to understand. Just take the first 10 numbers so you can understand what's happening. I'm just keeping it simple for you to understand. One, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81. Square are सब okay. List comprehension. So list dot append क्या करना है? और I in the range 1 to 10. तो वो 1 से लेके 10 तक, 1 to 10, 10 मतलब 9 तक, 1 से लेके 9 तक सारे नंबर का स्क्वायर का एक लिस्ट बनना चाहिए. That is list comprehension that we have. Now here I am trying to create a list, but of all numbers in the range of 1 to 1 lakh, 1 lakh 1 दिया है मतलब 1 lakh, उनकी मैं लिस्ट बनाना चाहूंगा. तो यहाँ 1 lakh तक की लिस्ट खत्म हो गई थी. The list got over here. Okay, so that's a time consuming. I'm just doing it just to tell you it's a time consuming operation that we have. और फिर उसका sum return करेगा. उन सारे नंबर का sum is going to be returned and so on. So it's a time consuming operation. Let's do it. This is the decorator that we have. No, the original function. And I call this function called as list operations. List underscore operations 3 times. The list operation, अच्छा operation है इसमें. कहता है this is the total of all those numbers. Numbers in the range of 1 to num times plus 1. अब num times मैंने कितना दिया अभी यहाँ 3. तो in the range of 1 to oh here I'm saying 10,001. So that's the reason we got the answer, large answer. So Yeah, I'm saying for वो सारे नंबर के टोटल कर लिया and that total I'm returning. तो suppose ये जो काम था ना 1,00,000 नंबर का टोटल करके उसे रिटर्न करना, I want to perform it 3 times. तो ये 3 बार के लिए तो आसानी से हो गया. But suppose if I say I want to perform it 3,000 times, it's going to take some time. It's taking time. 3,000 बार आपको 1 से 1,00,000 तक के सारे नंबर का टोटल लेना है. That's really time consuming. That's really time consuming. Okay. So assume ये मेरा function है. And for whatever reason, I wanted to check how much time this function takes for its execution. Okay. So let's do it. Let's see as to how we can do it. So I have this function called as list operations, and I have decorated it with check execution time. So what happens? Let's see. If I have we have this check execution time earlier. That's my decorator. I decorate this list operation on it so that it can return me the result. Function tools and time not defined. Function tools and I have my decorator. Here. Now my function has been decorated. This function has been decorated. If I say do this operation 2 times, it's saying finished operation in 0.181 seconds. ये टोटल था. अब मैं कहता हूँ 20 टाइम्स करो, कहते हैं इतना समय लगा तो 0.2213 सेकेंड्स. अब मैं कहता हूँ 2000 बार करो, इट्स गोइंग टू टेक सम सब्सटेंशियल टाइम. यानी 1 से लेके 1 लाख की टोटल मुझे 2000 बार करनी है. इट्स टेकिंग सम टाइम. Let me do it. I'll have a glass of water meanwhile. Thousand times it has to do the total. हो गया. So it took 22 seconds to perform this operation 22 times. To perform this operation 2000 times. However, उसने result return कर लिया. So we are actually taking the sum of all the numbers in the range of 1 to 1 lakh. वही रहेगा. The answer will not be different. Every place you're getting the same answer, but how many times you're doing is very important. So how have I defined this? When I'm decorating your function with the check execution time, okay, what it does. Here we come. I say function flu.wraps function. So nobody will be aware that this function is actually being called. किसी को नहीं पता चलेगा. I take a timer, time.pref counter. Okay, this pref counter is a preferred counter. There are various clocks which are there. I'm just taking pref clock. Here we go. Pref counter is what I'm using. So I get the start time. I call this function. I call this particular function and I again get the end time. और दोनों में जो difference है, that's the amount of time that it has taken. और वो वैल्यू हम लोग रिटर्न करेंगे. वो वैल्यू हम लोग रिटर्न करेंगे. But then what about that number of times? So what is going to happen is when I give this call to this list operation, I pass number of times. So यहाँ this loop will run that particular or perform this particular operation that many number of times. Right? But then how am I getting the time? ये start time, end time कैसे मिल रहा है मुझे? Okay. So here I have said finished with this operation in so many seconds. I could also say started the operation and then finish with the operation. That's also how we could do it. So what we're doing is we're taking the counter, the preferential counter machine time. We call this function, get the return value, again take the time, and difference in these 2 times is the total amount of time that it has taken. So इतने सेकंड में एक काम कर लिया. 0.4 मतलब राउंड ऑफ करो अप टू 4 डिजिट प्रिसीजन. अगर कोई डेसिमल में आ जाता है तो ये आपका टाइम आ गया. And then we return the value. ये जो आपकी वैल्यू रिटर्न हो रही है, that is what we are returning. We are returning that value as well. So I have this function list operation. I call it 10 times. जल्दी से हो गया 10 times. आपके लिए कोई तो टोटल आ गया 10 times के नेबर instead of anything else. This is the result that I got list operation 10. तो when I say list operation 10 times ये काम करो, क्या काम करो? 1 से लेके 1 लाख 1 तक, यानी 1 लाख तक के सारे नंबर की लिस्ट बनाओ और लिस्ट का सम दे दो, and we get a result. But that's when I'm calling this function 10 times. Let's keep it again ready, and let's call it once again. Further operation, it took how much time? 0.188 seconds. That's the time it has taken. After that, I want to know what's the name of the function. It's not going to say list operations. It's going to say list operation and not function wrapper timer. The user is under impression कि वो वही call कर रहा है जो उसे चाहिए था. Documentation returns the sum of the square of all numbers in the range of 1 to 1 lakh. Repeated numbers, what it is, repeated runtime and what it is. He is not in a position to identify कि जब आप इसे डेकोरेट कर रहे हो तो आप ये डायरेक्टली कॉल नहीं कर रहे हो. You're actually calling the wrapper timer, which is internally calling the function that you have passed, because your function list operation is passed as a parameter to check execution time. The outer function will receive your function name. Inner function will do the operation, inside which it will make a call to the outer function and perform some operation before and some operation afterwards, before and after that call. Here I have kept a track key, how much time that function took for execution. So that could be some use case. So if I have write a decorator, and with that decorator, I would like to tell the user, carry this function takes how many times to execute. I can just decorate. We said that loop laga hai, you could execute only once also, but I can now write a function which we can monitor whose performance. That means we can check whether this function took how much so and so amount of time or not is what we can actually check. Have you understood this?
सर वो डेकोरेटर वाला फंक्शन यूज करेगा बट नेम हाइड करेगा ना.
सारे properties hide करें. Function is an object. Every object has some property, some piece of information. So it's going to take the properties of the function जिससे आपने उसे wrap किया. Means here कहा गया migrating हो गया, do twice हो गया, here मैं ये दिखा देता हूँ मैं here. When I say function to the wrap function, that means this function to which this decorator is applied. So what does this decorator do? The attributes of this function are now becoming attributes of this function. So it's gonna wrap this wrapper. So attributes of this function will now become the properties of this particular function. That's the reason if I say wrapper timer dot name, in that wrapper timer tab naam bahar nahi rahega, but some the function name dot name will not give me wrapper time. It will actually give me the name of the function that we are actually decorating it with. Name of the function which is being decorated. In this case, the decorated function is this. Okay, so the name of the function will not be the function called as wrapper time twice. Rather, it will be the name of the function which is being decorated by the decorator. Understood?
Yes, sir.
It is inheriting the properties of that particular function. Only one aspect remains. You can have a look at other examples, but there's one aspect that I have to discuss. If I have a decorator which takes in some parameters, so how do you design such decorator which takes in a parameter? That is what we are going to check it now. Look at this. I have a decorator called as repeat. It's going to repeat the operation 3 times. So ये जो number of times है, तो ये कहता है I am a repeater. I have a decorator called as repeat. Decorator repeat. So decorator repeat को हमने enclose किया है inside a function called as repeat, which I am using as a decorator to decorate grid. In normal case, what will happen is अगर मैं इस grid को call करता हूँ in normal case, and if I'm gonna create Shantanu, it says hello Shantanu. That is the regular thing. Now, if I have such a decorator that has been created, and now I'm going to decorate this grid by saying num times is 3 for whatever name that we pass. And now I'm going to give a call to that function grid, and I'm going to pass some name. So the hello asif, hello asif, hello asif 3 times. So ये मेरी मर्जी है 3, 4, and I said 9, 3, 9, 10 times. So I have a decorator which will repeat that thing 10 times. Last time do twice था fix था. Greeting क्या था? Hello asif 10 बार. How are we doing this? This is a decorator which takes in parameter. But then decorator is a function which takes a function name as a parameter. यहाँ तो function name नहीं दिखाई दे रहा है. So this is behaving like a decorator, but it's just like a regular function. So what is the parameter that we are passing 10 is now being assigned to this variable called as num times. But remember one rule, the inner function will always remember the state of the variables of the surrounding environment. तो ये wrapper decorator के पास ये num times रहेगा, wrapper repeat के भी पास num times रहेगा. तो दिस इज द एक्चुअल डेकोरेटर. तो डेकोरेटर के बाहर और एक फंक्शन डालेंगे हम लोग. तो आई हैव दिस डेकोरेटर व्हिच इज द फंक्शन दैट यू लाइक टू डेकोरेट. व्हिच इज द फंक्शन दैट यू लाइक टू डेकोरेट. आई एम सेइंग इट सेज आई एम द डेकोरेटर. आई हैव अ रैपर and that can wrap the properties of this function. So I could just say from function tools function underscore tools. Let's import this and I'll say this dot I'm going to say whatever the properties of this function, make sure they are applied to this. Inside this, I'm saying non-local num times. That means num times is not a variable that I'm defining over here. It is a variable of the surrounding environment. So a num times from the surrounding environment is taken. I say for t in the range num times. तो अगर आपने num times यहाँ 10 दिया है, तो will now be for t in the range 10 times. आप उस फंक्शन को 10 बार कॉल करोगे और फिर वैल्यू रिटर्न करोगे. Whatever value that you return over here, यहाँ आप रिटर्न कर रहे हैं. Correct? So that's the nested function that we have. This decorator function returns the wrapper repeat a inner जो उसको return करना चाहिए, and this repeat returns this decorator repeat, the entire thing. Because it's going to return you the wrapper repeat function, a wrapper repeat and a function call होगा. So when I decorate this function greeting with that name, I said 10 times. So I'm going to greet that fellow 10 times with the message. So what I've done is I have created a so-called decorator with a parameter. Idea is very simple. If I want to create a decorator with a parameter, तो आपका जो actual decorator है, right inside a function with the parameters. These parameters can be accessed inside your decorator, the real decorator which is over here, by using the statement called as non-local num times. We're saying, okay, don't create a variable called as num times which is local to this function. Non-local. कल हमने देखा था non-local. यानी global environment में देखो, but surrounding environment में देखो. यहाँ है क्या num times नहीं है, तो यहाँ है क्या num times हाँ है. So it will look out for that variable in the surrounding environment, neither inside its own function, neither at the global level, but in the surrounding environment. So num times मिल गया. So I'm going to run the loop that many number of times, and then I'm going to return the value. So it's going to repeat that operation. आपका ये function जो भी रहेगा greet, that will get called every time. So whatever is a function, I would like to repeat it user-defined number of times. I create a decorator with a parameter. So we have created decorator with a parameter. Parameter is number of times it should be applicable. It is just like a regular function, but it returns a decorator repeat. This decorator repeat is an actual decorator, which has this inner function, which takes this function as a parameter and performs some operation on that function. It's calling that function. But then once this function completes, it returns the value that your function has returned. In this case, whatever the value function greet has returned. Greet में तो none return क्या है? तो ये none आ जाएगा. And the same value none is now being returned. So wrapper repeat returns none. So if I have this function called as a wrapper repeat, and if I actually call this function, watch it, had this been an individual function, suppose, had this been num times क्या बोल रहा है? Anyway, had this been a num times मतलब बाहर का जो num times है वो क्या लेना है वो पूछ रहा है. तो मैंने कहा repeat 3 ऐसा लिख देता हूँ. And non-local so and so. ये भी comment out करो for a moment. And let's have a look at this function. ये आपका function है. And I say wrapper underscore repeat 2 times. Now if I try and do that, it says func is undefined. Because here you're calling this function func that is undefined, whatever the function that you're passing. So the basic idea to create a decorator with a parameter, actually whatever is your decorator, that will put across inside a regular function that takes in as a parameter. That regular function will behave as if I'm the decorator. So when I say num times is 10, so that's the default value, that 10 is received over here. And this decorator repeat returns the inner function, and the outer function returns the actual decorator. So when I say at the repeat 10 times, what happens is this statement goes off, गायब हो जाता है, और यहाँ क्या आता है तो decorator repeat. So it now becomes at the rate decorator repeat. ये ऐसा बन जाता है. Decorator underscore repeat. ये ऐसे बन जाता है. Why? Let me explain why. Pause this very carefully. If I say this is my function greet, which has now been decorated, suppose which is not being decorated, suppose it's not being decorated, and I want to get the same results. So what I could do, I could say repeat of 3. Now when I say repeat of 3, I'm going to give all this function. Understand very carefully. When I say repeat of 3, we're going to call this function 3 यहाँ pass हो गया as a parameter. But what does this function return? This function returns decorator repeat. यानी जब आप इस फंक्शन को कॉल करते हो तो यहाँ decorator repeat कॉल होता है, रिटर्न होता है, and that takes greet as a parameter. So if I want to create a decorator with a parameter, we are actually cheating. We are creating a regular function with a parameter which returns the decorator, So when I say repeat of 3, it will return you the decorator. तो ये decorator return होगा और आगे आपका function जिसको decorate करना है, that is being passed as a parameter. And this particular thing will return the wrapper repeat, and that will now be assigned to your greet. But in this entire process, we also made sure whatever the parameters of this function, the actual function called as greet, the same one are assigned to this wrapper repeat. So nobody is aware of existence of wrapper repeat. किसी को मालूम नहीं है wrapper repeat क्या है, मालूम ही नहीं है. So this is how you create a decorator with a parameter. Actually, decorator with a parameter is not a decorator. It's a version. It's a function that returns a decorator. देखो ये नीचे सबसे नीचे it returns a decorator. So since it has returned that decorator, then this particular function is passed as a parameter. So that will go here. That will go here, and that is being called from within this wrapper repeat. The reason for that is because the decorator returns the wrapper repeat, and that gets stored into this. So when I'm calling this Amar, greet Amar, I'm actually calling a wrapper repeat. So that's how you create decorators with parameters. Have you understood this? Decorator with parameter. decorated with argument. I'm just sharing this file with you for your reference. So that concludes our discussion on this concept of decorator. What I have not discussed with you all is only one aspect, that we can have a nested decorator, decorator within a decorator. That's also something which is possible. Decorator within a decorator. I can apply multiple decorators. I can apply more than one decorators. But then the behavior is exactly the same. एक decorator call होगा, वो कुछ return करेगा. That will be passed to the outer decorator. The outer decorator will get called, and that will return some other function. So that's the same thing. Let me see if I have some example to demonstrate that, so that nothing will be left out. Let's have it. एक बार देख ही लेते हैं. We had already seen this do twice and debug. हमने पहले देखा था. So I have a function called as greet. I decorated with debug, and that I also decorated do twice. That means this greet function has two decorators. But for that, we'll have to go to this function decorator 4, यहाँ जाना होगा, and look at this do twice and debug. ये दो अलग-अलग decorators हैं. So let's execute this thing and keep it ready. तो ये decorators है मेरे पास, या फिर मैं यहाँ इसको execute करके memory में रख देते हैं. These are their memory. Okay. And let me comment out these statements. Here we go. So we have these two decorators, do twice and debug, which you already learned. Now what I'm going to do is, decorator nested. I have a function called as make greeting, which has been decorated by debug. So I'm going to pass name and age. Age नहीं pass करो तो none है. And अगर age pass किया तो it's going to print this. Let's see this function's behavior first. I'm not decorating it initially. I just say make greeting. I pass the name. Yeah. I pass age as 45. It says, oh Raja, 45 already, you are growing up. Okay. So we're just filling saying like you are so and so age. ऐसा कुछ तो कह रहे. तो अगर age none है, तो अगर आपने age नहीं पास किया, age 45 नहीं पास किया, तो print howdy राजा. And अगर आपने age पास कर लिया, तो वो राजा 45 already, you are growing up. ये आपका regular function है. But I'm going to debug it. So it will tell you which function is being called and other things, correct? ये decorate कर लिया. Now I'm going to call this. इधर देता है calling function so and so with two arguments and what it has returned, all those things decorated that we are seeing. We also had a function called do twice. A decorator called as do twice. So I'm going to, this is a function that I have. Here a function है called as greet. If I call this function greet and I pass the name of the function to whom I would like to greet, it's going to say hello Raja and return hello Raja. देखो ये print करेगा hello Raja और यहाँ से return किया hello Raja. दो बार, एक print किया, एक return किया. How do you know it's being returned? If I say x is equal to greet and I say Rani, so it says hello Rani, and x is also having the same value, whatever it have returned. Okay, so that's your regular greet function. अगर मैं इसे debug कर देता हूँ, then what will happen? If I debug this, now if I call greet with Rani as a parameter, it's going to tell you, okay, calling greet with one argument, side effect क्या hello Rani, greet return hello Rani, all those things. So it's that debugging that we think that we're seeing. But अगर मैं इसको दो इससे decorate करता हूँ, then the story is going to be different. Okay, if I decorate with two things, debug भी करूंगा और do twice भी करूंगा. So if I now do this, so before that what I'll do is I'll say del grid and decorate. Okay, there we go. I'm going to decorate it twice. तो अगर मैंने इसे nested decoration ले लिया और अगर मैं अभी grid को कॉल करता हूँ grid मोहन, तो क्या होगा देखिए, ये debugging एक बार और debugging दो बार. What actually happens over here is if I decorate it twice, it is as good as writing something like this. कि grid function we pass to debug, debug जो wrapper return करेगा that is passed to do twice, और do twice ने जो return किया वो grid में आ गया. So decorating twice is like passing your function to the first decorator that returns the inner function, and that inner function यानी debug का inner function कौन सा है, debug का inner function wrapper debugger है, this will now be passed to do twice. Yes, wrapper do twice. So your function is passed to debug. Debug का जो wrapper inner function है that is being passed to this, and your grid will refer to that function. You want to check that? So let's say grid dot dunder name dunder. It's saying wrapper do twice call हो रहा है. कैसे wrapper do twice call हो रहा है? That's because जब आपने पहली बार decorate कर लिया, so that went to debug. तो debug के अंदर function कौन सा था? ये wrapper debug था. That wrapper debug now is passed as a parameter do twice. तो जब do twice में आते हो, the function over here is wrapper do twice. Function over here is wrapper debug. Now this wrapper debug is wrapped inside this wrapper do twice, and that is the one that is being returned. और ये जो return किया गया है, ये आपके grid को assign हो चुका है. तो grid is actually wrapper do twice and nothing else. So I can have as many number of decorators, but remember, first this function is passed to this particular first decorator as a parameter. वो जो return करेगा that is passed to this decorator as a parameter. तो ये nesting है. So innermost decorator's return value will be passed to the outer decorator. Its return value will pass to the outer decorator, and so on. So you can have any levels of nesting of decorators. So you can apply more than one decorator to a function as well. That's also possible. Have you understood this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me just share this files with you. The ones that I have not shared, I shared all the examples with you. Make sure that you go ahead with these examples, study these things, and be ready for the next class. We have completed one of the lengthiest topic in Python, that is functions, is what we have completed today. It's time for us to actually go ahead with the new topic, and that will be to understand what these modules and packages are. इसके आगे सारे applications like topic है, file handling कैसे करेंगे, exception handling कैसे करेंगे, object oriented programming कैसे करेंगे, graphical user programming interface कैसे create करेंगे. So those are the topics, last few topics, which are all advanced, which are now it's time for us to apply what we have learned in Python. Language is over, now it's more like application. But before that, modules and packages in Python is what we'll be discussing next time. So I think, did I share it to everybody? Yeah.
No, sir.
No, sir, not important.
नहीं आया.
I shared it to Monica by mistake. Here we go. सारे फाइल शेयर कर देता हूँ. I'll share all the files once again. So with that note, we'll stop here today. See you tomorrow for a new topic altogether. Modules and packages. Today we used a module, decorator from, decorator for, import, do twice, something like that we did. So tomorrow we'll learn more about how to create a module, how to create a package, how to distribute the package. That means you create an application. How do you create a distributed unit of application, give it to your client. Those are the topics that we have to cover up. So that's all for today. See you tomorrow. Take care. Love you all. Bye-bye.